I go, I'm putting on. Putting on, putting on. Everywhere I go, I'm putting on. Putting on, putting on. Everywhere I go, I'm putting on. Putting on. Where you from?
Welcome to Popcorn Sports on the Popcorn Entertainment Network. I'm your host, Mike Kyle, and welcome to yet another episode of Why You Should Root for every team in the NBA for the 2018-2019 season. I, of course, am not alone. I am joined here by Andrew Goodman. You can follow him on Twitter at Andrew_Goodman3. He covers the Milwaukee Bucks at brewhoop.com. Andrew, go ahead and introduce yourself. How you doing today, man?
Doing well, man. You know, this is actually one of my first time doing one of these things, so I appreciate you reaching out and inviting me onto your show. Really appreciate it, Mike. You know, I might be the only Bucks fan right now living in Los Angeles, so, you know, there might be a few of us growing since the Bucks are off to a pretty hot start this season, but I like to consider myself a long-suffering Bucks fan, especially since you consider the fact that, you know, I've watched them win continuously like 20 games a season, even was with them when they won 15 games. So, you know, I would definitely classify myself as a ride or die fan. Absolutely.
Well, I'm very honored to be your very first guest appearance on a show, podcast, whatever you want to call this. So my first question for you is, how did you begin to cover the Bucks, and how ultimately did your fandom begin?
Okay, well, to answer your first question about how I first started, so I started covering the UCLA Bruins for Bruin Nation. You know, it's an SB Nation outlet for UCLA athletics.
Right.
And then I reached out to Mitchell Maurer and Adam Paris. They're the great guys. They're the head of Brew Hoop. And, you know, I kind of give them a little background. You know, I'm a little familiar with Chorus, which is the program SB Nation uses to write posts. You know how some blogs will have WordPress and that, but they use Chorus. So I basically gave them a little background of what I do and the various sports I cover for UCLA. And they gave me a shot, started this preseason. I actually contributed my first article for Brew Hoop after the Bucks' first preseason game against the Chicago Bulls, and then kind of hit the ground running. I've contributed, I think, at least around 4 or 5 more pieces, mostly just rapid recaps and stuff. But I am publishing within the next few days an article about Eric Bledsoe and his efficiency and how that translates into the success for the Milwaukee Bucks. And you might be wondering, what the hell is a person who was born and raised in LA, why is he a Bucks fan, right? So, long story short, great uncle, very distant, not going to lie, not very close at all, is Herb Cole. And you know Herb Cole.
Okay.
Sorry, I think some alarm just went off in the apartment. Sorry for that interruption, but yeah, Herb Cole, great uncle, very distant. So growing up, when he was a senator in Washington, I believe I went to visit him when I was about 9 years old. You know, we went to visit him. I saw, you know, his office in the U.S. Capitol. I thought that was really cool. And then I got home, and like a week later, a package arrives in my name. It's just a bunch of Bucks gear, and this was when they had that old school ugly purple and green with the real old school deer on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really started my fandom. So I want to say that was definitely in the early 2000s for sure, when, you know, the Bucks had Michael Redd, Michael Ruffin,
Yep.
Brian Skinner. You know, they weren't very good, but, you know, haven't wavered since then.
That is such a unique story. I was expecting just some, I really started getting into the NBA when I was, 10, and then for whatever reason, Bucks were my team. But no, that is really interesting, and that's so unique.
Yeah, you know, you would think I like the Lakers or Clippers, but to be honest, couldn't care less. The only other LA team I really root for is the Dodgers, who play Game 1 of the World Series tonight.
I was just about to say that. Yes, they do. So let's just shift gears now to the general overview of the Milwaukee Bucks. So they joined the NBA in 1968. They're called the Bucks because they are, quote, spirited, good jumpers, fast and agile, which are all great characteristics for a good basketball player. Their colors, which is a relatively new color scheme, is green, a cream white with a sprinkle of black and light blue, which I just think all culminate to form a really, really dope color scheme. 30 playoff appearances, 1 championship in 1971, and they play in the Central Division with the Bulls, Cavs, Pistons, and Pacers. So let's just take this time right now that we got that general overview out of the way. Let's talk about last season, because I think last season really elevated the Bucks up a tier in the Eastern Conference. They went 44-38, and they lost in the first round of the playoffs. But like I just said, they really just began to emerge as a contender in the East.
Yeah, you know, I thought last year was pretty interesting. You know, they had two head coaches. They fired Jason Kidd mid-season. And, you know, I was just going to be honest, did not like Jason Kidd at all. Thought he was a horrible coach. It was really interesting if you look at the Bucks' advanced metrics. They did have a top 10 offensive rating at 108, but their offensive system, quote unquote, pretty much relied on just giving the ball to Giannis and having him make a play. They did acquire Eric Bledsoe early in the season, but when there's a lack of offensive system, between the players and coaching staff, it's really just going to be in shambles and it's going to be a free-for-all.
Right.
And, that offensive inefficiency really led to a lot of downfalls. Defensively, they were even worse. Defensively, they were in the bottom half in terms of NBA defensive rating. And a big part of why they struggled a lot last season is because they were very prone to giving up three-point looks to their opponents, specifically in the corner. Time after time, last season, Bucks fans saw opposing teams just rail them from downtown, and a lot of that had to do with their over-aggressive defensive scheme from then defensive coordinator for the Bucks, Sean Sweeney, who is now with the Detroit Pistons. He basically implemented a system that was all trapping off pick and rolls rather than having your defender sink into the paint, which led to trapping on the wings, and the opposing team would make one extra pass, boom, you have wide open shooter in the corner. Or there's at least going to be one man open when you're double teaming. So that's really what led to a lot of their defensive deficiencies. But, now that you're kind of looking at a new head coach, a new system, things are sort of changing. And, they did win 44 games last season, which is, for Bucks standards, which is pretty solid. But, you did lose in 7 games to the Boston Celtics, who didn't have Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. Granted, it was an entertaining series, but, if a team is down, they're two best players who are, players that are in the better half in terms of talent in the NBA, you kind of expect them to win. So I kind of feel like last year's ending to the season was pretty fitting, to say the least.
One of the things that you just said that I thought was really interesting was that how offensively they were one of the better teams, but then defensively, that's where everything struggled. And I think that's like, when you look at the talent of that roster, especially with the guy like Giannis who can just do so many different things offensively, I feel like that just really just defined who they were last season, because you do have all that talent on offense, but they didn't have the defensive pieces especially. And I feel like that's just kind of like what you saw last season. When you saw, yes, they went above 500, but there were some games when it looked really good, and there were some games where it's like, oh my god, like this team should probably be in the bottom half of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, exactly. Last season the Bucks had a tendency to lose to teams that they, should beat handily, take care of business. So, that was very frustrating. And one thing offensively about the Bucks last season that I could not stand was, Jason Kidd's infatuation with mid-range shots. He basically encouraged most shots in the paint, which is fine, but he discouraged taking three-point shots and basically encouraged mid-range happy offense, which is this isn't the 1980s anymore, Most teams, everyone on any roster in the NBA can shoot threes now.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stats right now, and they were 25th in the league in three-point percentage last season. And honestly, how I just referenced how like they were very up and down in the sense of, hey, like, yes, they had great offense but a bad defense, but like so it kind of evened out to be middle of the road. In terms of wins and losses, they were 15th. So they were literally just dead smack in the middle of the entire NBA last season. But let's just kind of focus on this year now, because this is a brand new season. They brought in Mike Budenholzer, former coach of the Hawks, just great offensive mind to really help this team. Their roster looks like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is an MVP candidate on the cover of this year's NBA 2K, Eric Bledsoe, John Henson, Dante DiVincenzo, the rookie, sharpshooter out of Villanova, Khris Middleton, Thon Maker, Malcolm Brogdon, who was a Rookie of the Year winner, Tony Snell, Ersan Ilyasova. Go ahead and break down this roster for me.
Okay, I really like what you just said, but I think the most important aspect of the Bucks' success this season, other than Mike Budenholzer, has been the play of point guard Eric Bledsoe. As we know, last season, he got owned by Terry Rozier in the playoffs, so it didn't really end on a high note for Eric Bledsoe. But a big story coming into the season was if Eric Bledsoe, if he revitalizes his game under Mike Budenholzer and becomes more efficient, more pass first rather than ball dominant like he was last year, it'll go a long way for the Bucks, and we're seeing that this year. He's averaging 14 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, and his assists are up 7.7, which is pretty good considering the fact that he's only turning the ball over 1.3 times per game. And his shooting has been spectacular, 54.5% from the floor and 41.2% from deep, which is great considering the fact that he's a career 33.8 3-point shooter. So, if Eric Bledsoe I think his shooting is definitely going to go down just a bit, specifically his shooting from the field. But if he can keep his three-point shooting up around, the high 30s, I think that'll definitely go a long way for the Bucks. And also Khris Middleton. You can't have a Bucks segment without talking about Giannis, but I just want to hit on Khris Middleton.
Of course.
Did you see the game? Did you see the game he had yesterday?
I did.
My goodness, amazing. He looked like an elite player. To start the season, he's averaging 24 points per game, 6.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 1.3 steals, and he's shooting 58% from the floor and a pearly 65.2% from deep on 8 attempts per game, which is just absurd.
Which has also contributed to the Bucks starting off the season 3-0.
Exactly, and that's pretty much what Khris Middleton shot from the field last postseason against the Celtics, so he really hasn't missed a beat. But what's really interesting about the Bucks is they're 3-0, and everyone up and down the roster's contributed. But when you look at Giannis' stats, 27.3 points per game, 16 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 1.3 blocks, 5.7 turnovers per game. If you watch the Bucks, Giannis has struggled in their first 3 games.
Yep.
Like I said, might not look at it when you look at his stats on paper, but if you watch the game, he's missing a lot of shots that he's typically made, and he's shooting 46.6% from the field, which is under his 50.6 career average. So, I think obviously his field goal percentage is going to go up, revert towards his career average, but, he's definitely struggling. I think a large part of that is he's not getting as many foul calls as he did last season. He's going to the foul line 7 times so far this season. He went almost 9 last game. So it seems like so far this season that refs are calling fouls against Giannis a little differently.
One of the things that you just said is that Giannis, he hasn't played well, and I saw that firsthand. So you guys actually beat my Hornets in the first game of the season. Thank you for the defeat. I really appreciate that. But yeah, Giannis,
I'm sorry, but
Giannis, obviously Giannis is going to stuff the stat sheet because that's just who he is. And I don't mean that in a negative. I mean that in the most positive context, where he is just a player that is going to get his no matter what. But you saw, and from what I've seen so far earlier this year, as you said, he has struggled. And I feel like it's just, I don't think it's like some 2K curse or anything like that. I think it might just be his roles changing a little bit, where Budenholzer's going to put a little bit more on him, and so he's kind of adjusting to that and that new offensive style. But then overall, as you just mentioned, he's not getting what he was called last year. He's not going to the line as much. And maybe, honestly, he's just trying to get different shots than he was last year.
Yeah, exactly. And to harp on that point you just said about getting different shots, he's definitely not been shy about pulling up from 3 or, just mid-range jump shot. His jump shot still work in progress, but this season, the fact that, he's shooting it without hesitation, and his form actually looks a bit better, definitely tweaks some mechanics a little bit. But just overall, the fact that he's shooting it without thinking about it really, it shows a lot, even though he's missing him. Those are going to go in eventually.
Right. So right now, let's shift. Well, I want to stick with this year's roster. Give me one player who you're really excited to watch this season that you haven't mentioned already. So you can't use Giannis, you can't use Bledsoe, and you can't use Khris Middleton.
You know what? I really love my boy White Dante.
The White Dante!
White Dante, my boy.
Hang on. I'm stopping you. I'm so glad you just pulled that reference. I'm so happy because I was unsure if you were gonna make it or if I was gonna make it, and the fact that you just pulled it out first, I love it. Go ahead. Continue.
I love that show. High Noon. It's a great show. But yeah, Dante DiVincenzo, I didn't really expect him to play as much as he's been playing so far. I think in their first game against the Hornets, I want to say he was either first or second off the bench, and he finished playing 22 minutes. So he's consistently in the first 3 games been first or second off the bench. It's either him or Ersan Ilyasova. But I just love how aggressive Dante is off the catch and shoot. He's always ready to shoot the ball. Really athletic. And, I don't know if you've seen pregame videos of him hyping up the squad.
I have.
In the pregame circle. I think that's great. And it seems like the Bucks and the team, they really have rallied around, this White Dante, this little white boy hyping us up, and I just love it. I think it's great.
He's averaging 21, or he's averaging just under 21 minutes, putting up just under 6 points. And for a rookie, especially with a team like Milwaukee, who has had their struggles in terms of having either a pure point guard, or not having a pure point guard, but having scoring options other than Giannis at times, I feel like just having a guy like Dante who can come in and make 4 threes in a game is going to really help that offense just blossom even more.
Right, and like you said, Milwaukee, if you looked at the roster before the start of the season, you'd say, they really don't have that many playmakers on the roster, but the Bucks rank upper half in terms of assists, and that really emphasizes Mike Budenholzer's offensive focal point of, sharing the sugar, moving the ball around, you pass up a good shot for a better one, and that's definitely what we've seen so far.
So you have some notes, and obviously we are now 3 games in. I believe this is going to go up on Thursday. I don't know if they have a game tonight or tomorrow. I know they play.
They play tomorrow.
Oh yeah, so I was gonna say
Philadelphia.
They played last night. Oh yes, they have that big game versus Philadelphia. So what's been your thoughts about this season so far for the Bucks?
They look like a completely different, revamped, retooled team from last season. It looks like they have a system offensively. You have Mike Budenholzer implementing this offensive system where it's all threes and, shots in the paint, which I absolutely love. If you look at their shot chart the last 3 games, I think they've shot at least less than 5 mid-range jumpers per game, which is excellent. Bucks are, I believe, they're second or third in the NBA in terms of 3-point rate per game, which is fantastic when you consider the fact that, they're shooting it pretty solid from 3 to start the season. So I think the emphasis on the 3-point shot and points in the paint is what really is elevating, Khris Middleton, Eric Bledsoe, and Giannis. And also I think the addition of Brook Lopez has helped a lot. Definitely not shy about shooting it from 3, and although his, 3-point percentage isn't the greatest, opposing defenses still have to respect his ability to shoot. So when he camps in the corner, that pulls the opposing center away from the basket, which allows, Giannis more room to operate, crash down the middle, go to the hoop, and, that'll, if you look at the Bucks game film, when Giannis drives, they'll have at least 2 people open on the perimeter.
Hang on, I'm looking it up right now. They are 3rd in 3-point makes and 7th in 3-point attempts, so that's definitely an increase in what you saw last season when they were about 25th in that category.
Yeah, it's a nice change for once that instead of Milwaukee's opponents burning them from 3, it's actually the Bucks burning their opponents from 3. And also, I like what I've seen defensively so far from the Bucks. I mean, it's not, they're not going to be a top defensive team in the NBA, but when you look at their defensive rating, it's at 105, which is 8th in the NBA. So if they can keep it around top 10, which is pretty solid, I think that could be a recipe to success and ultimately lead to at least 53 wins, in my opinion.
One of the things that's interesting, I think, with the Bucks is, we've talked about it a little bit already, how they aren't the best defensive team, but I just feel like that's so shocking when they have guys with the length of John Henson, Giannis, Thon Maker, Malcolm Brogdon, who's just a great guard, Tony Snell, who's another lengthy wing player. Like, how they aren't good defensively is beyond me.
Right, that exactly, and I think a lot of that, we thought the Bucks would be excellent defensively last year. Like you said, they have all this length and athleticism, but I think that Jason Kidd, Joe Prunty system of, trapping, over-aggressiveness really just fatigued the defense and led to too many open looks. And now that they're dialed back under Mike Budenholzer defensively, not as aggressive, and their defenders are sinking in the pick and roll. So the Bucks defensively are encouraging teams to shoot the mid-range shot, which, the Knicks, they beat the Knicks yesterday. The Knicks made a lot of mid-range shots, but, the Bucks are going to live with that. They'd rather have you shoot mid-range than, they'll contest the 3, but they definitely rather have you shoot mid-range than 3s, for sure.
Right. So let's kind of shift focus now. I want to talk about the fan base, the fun, the culture surrounding the Bucks, because it's an exciting time to be a fan of the Bucks this season and going forward in future seasons. So they are a small market team, but it's a super, super tight-knit fan base. They're looking to make the leap this season into the top 3 teams of the Eastern Conference. Giannis is one of the mostly widely predicted MVP candidates this season. Their roster has just talent up and down. So, just what are your thoughts about being a fan of the Bucks, the culture of the organization, and things like that?
Well, there's definitely been a culture shift. As a suffering Bucks fan, we've definitely been stuck in this, quicksand of mediocrity. So that's really, if you ask anyone really around the NBA what the Bucks mantra has been like the last 15 years, it's been mediocrity. So it's real nice to see, change in culture. They're really focused on winning, and it's translating onto the results on the court, which is great because years past there's been all this talk, oh, we're going to be great, we're going to contend, but then hey, we end up as the 8th seed and so on and so forth, which is really how the Bucks have ended up whenever they made in the playoffs. Always a first round exit. I think they have the longest drought without winning a first round playoff series, which is very embarrassing.
Let me look.
But you have this brand spanking new state-of-the-art Fiserv Forum, which is really freaking beautiful, and I hope I can make it out there this season. So I think that's definitely going to attract more fans for sure. But Wisconsinites, they're very passionate about their sports, whether it be the Brewers, the Badgers, the Packers. They're very passionate. They'll make their voices heard. And although they typically rank towards middle bottom half of attendance, definitely seen a change in that so far since they opened up the Fiserv Forum. Their last 2 home games, even against the Knicks and the Pacers, it's felt like a playoff atmosphere watching it on TV. So the fans, they're definitely rejuvenated about the Bucks this season for sure.
What do you think the expectations are for the Bucks this season and then in the future?
Okay, you're asking me this season. I think if they don't win at least 50+ games, it's a failure.
So you're looking at a top 4 seed in the East.
Yeah, if they're not top 3, top 4, I'd definitely categorize that as a slight failure for sure. Definitely if they don't win 50 games, because how I look at it is they won 44 games with Jason Kidd as a head coach.
Right.
So you get Mike Budenholzer,
who is a severe upgrade.
Exactly. It's like going from McDonald's to Mastro's, which is a steakhouse we have out here in LA. But basically, that right there to me is at least worth 6-win improvement for sure. At minimum, 6-win improvement. So that's why I think you don't win 50 games in the Central Division. It's kind of a fail considering how the Central Division has looked so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, especially right now in the Central Division alone, the Bulls are 0-3, the Cavs are 0-3, the Pistons look to be decent, and obviously, and it looks like actually right now, Indiana is taking a little bit of a step back. I think they've lost 2 in a row now. So it's been interesting for sure with them. And so, I mean, like, this Central Division is really for the Bucks to take.
And yeah, exactly. And to answer your other question about the future, I think in the future you got to think them, Toronto, and Boston, they got to come out of the East. When this is all said and done, and we're looking back at Mike Budenholzer's tenure with the Bucks, if he didn't come out of the East with arguably the best player in the NBA besides LeBron James, I mean, I would say it's a failure, especially when you look at the pieces that they've surrounded him with now.
Well, you think? So I'm jumping off of that last point that you just made there. With you said that you basically implied that Giannis is going to be the best player in the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he has the tools for it. There is not a doubt in my mind. He just and we talked about this earlier. Once again, another just cycle right here. He needs to get that jump shot. It's not broken. I'm not saying it's broken, but he needs to improve it. He has to become a threat from 2 feet as far as 26 feet.
No, of course, I couldn't agree more with you. But, for me, it's just crazy how, he really doesn't have a reliable jump shot, but he's still averaging 27 points per game, which is unfathomable. But, yeah, he's still 23 years old, I believe, so there's a lot of learning still to do. And, he worked out with Kobe this offseason. So, Giannis, as we know, is a guy who really loves to get after it. He's a severe gym rat. He won't stop until, he's reached his level of excellence. Mm-hmm. So I think, as the years go by, we're going to start seeing Giannis be a reliable jump shooter from 3 and also, overall jump shooter.
So one of the things that I can add to this, just speaking of Giannis as a whole, so I worked for the Cavs towards the end of last season and going into the postseason. And they played the Bucks, and I was on the floor before the game, and I was watching Giannis warm up. And I don't know if there is a bigger human that I have ever seen on a basketball floor. And I'm not talking in terms. I am talking in terms of height, but I'm also talking in terms of muscle and strength. Because obviously there are players taller than Giannis, but his height combined with his muscle and just his body mass, I was like he is not a human. He was made in a lab.
Yeah, I know he was made in a Russian laboratory for real. You've seen the size of his hands? It's
crazy.
Yes,
yeah, it's crazy.
It's insane. So, when you have a player, I think a little bit of why he struggles with a jump shot is...
His hands are too big.
His hands are too big. He's big. He's almost 7 feet. 7-footers like that with his wingspan. It's not really, you're not going to rely on your jump shot because, you can get to the basket in 2 steps after you cross half court, basically.
Right.
So I think that the height mixed with the length and his hand size really does... tweak his jump shot a little bit, but nothing you can't fix, hopefully.
Hang on, I'm looking to see what he shot from the floor exactly last season, because I have a theory. All right, so let's see. So from the floor last season, he shot 52%, which is pretty good. I mean, just relatively speaking, that's pretty damn good. If he can get that up to 55, maybe this season or moving forward, and that's the thing. It's like no one's asking him to take a quantum leap, but if he just has because that's the thing, LeBron had this too, where through I think it was 8 or 9 straight seasons, he increased his field goal percentage. And as you saw, and what you've seen from LeBron's career, is that he just becomes just so well-rounded as a scorer, as an offensive player, and it just makes everything so much easier. And so if we can see that similar trajectory with Giannis, and I'm looking at his season totals in general right now, and we're seeing that, he's going to be unstoppable in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's like LeBron. LeBron he's like wine. He just gets better with age, and I think that's going to be the case with Giannis. Especially with his capability to do more things than just score. He'll influence a game defensively. His playmaking ability is pretty spectacular at times. He's a little turnover happy this season, which is a little concerning. But if he can cut down the turnovers, I think most Bucks fans would say that they'd love for him to cut down the turnovers. Because at times, you've seen Bucks games, Giannis, whenever he puts his head down, sometimes he's a little too aggressive. That'll lead to him forcing pass or, committing a charge or just throwing the ball out of bounds. So I think if he can definitely tone down on the aggressiveness, I think that would go a long way. But, season is still young. So I think by the end of the season, we'll see Giannis somewhere, like you said, somewhere around the 55% range in field goal.
All right, there's 2 more things I want to talk about. The first one is just your experience with Bucks fans. You obviously write for Brew Hoop, so you get that community there. You are a Bucks fan that is based in LA. And so have you always been in LA?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've never actually had that direct Milwaukee experience, but what you do have is that social media experience with Bucks fans. So what are Bucks fans like as a whole?
You know what? It's funny. Bucks Twitter last season was very, very divisive when Jason Kidd was head coach. You had one corner of Bucks Twitter fighting for Jason Kidd and blaming it really on the front office, and then you had the other side, which was me included, that Jason Kidd, worst coach in the NBA, his principals are terrible, coaching staff is awful. And that really made a divide in Bucks fans. So you did have 2 ends of the spectrum. But, then once Jason Kidd got fired and we're seeing the results preseason and now, kind of brought Bucks fans together, kind of eased the tension a little bit now that we have a real head coach. And also, Brew Hoop is fantastic. They really give their commenters and their readers a platform, and they have really good social media following. So they give a big platform to Bucks fans, and I think that's great. And it's funny when the Bucks, this was starting, whatever I've been going to Bucks Lakers or Bucks Clippers game, I'm usually the only one in a Bucks jersey at the game. But ever since they added Giannis and they've been getting better, you're starting to see more Bucks jerseys in the crowd. And I went to the Bucks Clippers game last season, and there were a decent amount of Bucks fans for sure.
That is awesome. That's gotta be so cool for you to kind of plant your flag in LA first, being I'm the only Bucks fan here, and then slowly starting to see the Giannis jerseys trickle in. That's gotta be cool for you, but also gotta be like, you know what? I was here first. You weren't here. Get out.
This is my turf. Yeah. I went to Milwaukee for their playoff series when they lost to the Raptors.
Okay.
I believe I went to game...
That was 2 years ago, correct?
3. Yeah, 2 years ago. Game 3 or game 4, they lost. Whatever. But, it was great. I love the city of Milwaukee. It was, I think, my 3rd time being there. Just the city of Milwaukee is beautiful, and the people there are really nice. I was walking around in a Bucks jacket. I walk around in a Bucks jacket here. No one says anything. But I was walking around Bucks jacket in Milwaukee, and everyone's like, yeah, go Bucks, man, dapping me up and whatnot. Right. So I think, just Bucks fans overall, they're good.
That's nice. That's awesome. So we'll wrap it up with this.
Don't bring up Jason Kidd.
Yes.
Don't bring up Jason Kidd.
Okay, duly noted. So we'll wrap it up with this. You have 30 seconds to pitch anybody why they should be a fan of the Milwaukee Bucks this season. The floor is yours.
Okay, why you should be a fan of the Milwaukee Bucks. Number 1, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo. Say it right now, best player in the Eastern Conference, much-watched television. You couple that with Khris Middleton, budding all-star, who I think should have been an all-star last season. You couple that with the fact you got Eric Bledsoe, who's really elevated this year under Mike Budenholzer, and then you got head coach Mike Budenholzer really revitalized some of the tools of the Bucks players, and he really seems like the guy that's going to take the Bucks to the next level. So I think that's definitely why you got to watch the Bucks.
Ladies,
watch television.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Mike Kyle and Andrew Goodman. You can follow him on Twitter at Andrew_Goodman3. He covers Milwaukee Bucks over at brewhoop.com. Andrew, you got anything else to plug, my man?
I really appreciate you having me on, man. Hopefully we can do this sometime soon. Appreciate the time taking out of your busy class schedule to schedule this. It was great. Hope we can do this again soon, man.
Hey, let's do a playoff preview, shall we?
Sounds good. Hopefully we'll be there.
Awesome. Hey, if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. We're pumping this out for every team in the NBA. I think this is episode number 23, so we got 7 more to go. The series is winding down, but go ahead and check out all of the previous episodes linked down below. And with that, we'll see you next time.